Welcome back to the Elder Scrolls Legends Master Series, brought to you by Alienware. We are 3 rounds in, gonna get into round number 4 between Boomslife and Frenzy next. 2 players who have very, very storied histories throughout all of competitive Tesla.
Yeah, I'm super excited to see this. I'm especially excited to see Boomslife's triumphant return to the competitive scene after crushing it pretty much throughout the entire qualifier season, making it to the last chance qualifier, getting second place there. He's been playing since 2016. He was one of the first streamers for the game that everyone fell in love with, and it's awesome to see him back. And of course, we just saw Frenzy2, so it's going to be quite a match.
Yeah, absolutely. We have plenty of other great games coming on too. We also know what the first round of the semifinals is going to look like, so we're going to take a quick look at the bracket here just so we can know where it is we've been, where we're coming from, where we're going. Semifinals number 1 will be Full Deer versus QuakeCon, which is going to be a clash of titans. 2 players who were here last year coming back for another shot. Super thanks we just saw moving on after the last round. And Frenzy or Boomslife, one of them is going to have to try and take down that Dominion list at some point, or else they're going to have to ban it out.
Yeah, the fact that Thuldir and QuakeCon both made top 4 of 2 Master Series in 2 years is actually pretty absurd given the size of the competitive player base.
Yeah, there's a lot of players in this game, and it's an entire year's worth of meta developments, of new cards, of refinement on existing decks. I mean, Jason, if you were playing this year, would it be the exact same list you played last year?
They might be similar, but they might look like what our next matchup has. We're looking for a lot of control, changing pace from what we saw in the last round. I'm looking for some long games with a lot of decisions.
Well, with those long games comes decks that can support that. So we're going to take a look at Frenzy's deck list real quickly, get an idea of just who exactly he is. 29 years old, born and raised in the US, showing that Tribunal Temple list right now.
Yeah, that looks a lot like a TDC Jason deck. I mean, it might attack even too much for you, Jason, but that's, we see a Tribunal deck that has quite the top end. We have Laneth, Mana Marco, Marak, a couple copies of Dawn's Wrath, but Frenzy is still playing a bunch of cards that could give other control decks a headache, like Wild's Incarnate and Mighty Conjuring.
Yeah, Silver, how do you feel about the full 3 copies, the full playset of the Wild's Incarnate in this Tribunal list?
Well, you playtest a lot with Please Don't Hack Me, who won our last year's World Championship, and he is absolutely loved the moves. Just the flexibility when you're expecting these other control decks, for instance, of just being able to resource extension and drawing 2 cards is really quite incredible, and plus you get a 5/6 card. So overall, just a pretty strong card, and I can see why in Tribunal, where it's gone to these more like mid-rangey play styles, play decent cards on curve, that you would want to play Moose on curve consistently. So running 3 copies of that gives you the best chance of doing that.
Speaking of mid-rangey playstyles, we do have the Battle Mage and the Guildsworn, 2 of the most popular decks at the tournament. Battle Mage, one of those classic mid-range decks that we're seeing a lot. Guildsworn being very, very highly prized for its adaptability. Jason, anything here that you're looking at in particular? I'm looking at those 2 copies of Ravenous Crocodile.
Me too, definitely. I talked to Frenzy beforehand, wanted to up his total 2-drop count, and those crocodiles are a pretty good choice.
Yep, lots of wards that you can break. You can even use it on your Breton Conjurer. Grab yourself a 5/5. But CVH, does this Rage Guildsworn look a little standard to you? Look a little different? What are we seeing here?
Well, I wouldn't be the expert, but I mean, at the end of the day, you have a bunch of Rages and you have a bunch of good targets for them. It does have the staples, right? It has Elfie Conjurers, it has Mighty Conjurings, it has amazing targets. To me, it looks like it isn't super heavy on the top end, but it is 3 Wilds Incarnate. Again, he's really targeting anything slower with that. Like, if you're not breaking his runes, he's going to be getting the card advantage anyway. And again, we didn't really touch on it, but the Telvanni, it's got to be a call to the fact that he play tested with Please Don't Hack Me, right? He loves Telvanni. He played it to incredible success last year, winning the Master Series. So that's what happens when you test with former champion. You start playing their favorite classes, right?
And with that Telvanni, you can see that it focuses a little differently. It's more of an uprising build. Even though conscription is in there, which is something you expect from typical play, maybe on the ladder, the uprising is the star of that one.
Yeah, for sure. Even though Uprising got nerfed from 6 to 7 Magicka, it still packs a ton of value, reusing all of your summon effects. So that's another one of those decks that we see a player bring that no one else in the field had confidence in. We'll see if that one pays off, if it doesn't get banned, of course.
And on the other side of this matchup, we have Boomslife, who we could talk about, we're going to talk about, but first, let's hear him talk about himself for a sec. Let's go check out the interview that we did with Boomslife earlier in the week. Welcome, everyone. I am here with Boomslife, one of the Master Series contestants. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good.
You
Amazing.
excited to be here?
Absolutely.
Right on. So we were talking a little bit with Full Deer right before here, and you guys told me you have a little story that you wanted to tell between the two of you.
That's true. In the first qualifier for the Master Series event, me and Tolder both made top 8 on the upside side of the bracket. And we told each other we better meet each other in the finals. And that absolutely happened. So we hope to do that again this time. So we'll see.
What's your favorite deck that you brought to the tournament this year?
Favorite deck that I brought, I have to give it to... It's hard to choose one, actually. No, I have to give
Which of your children is your favorite?
Okay, I have to give it to Ebonheart.
Ebonheart?
Ebonheart is my favorite color combination right now. I'm the only one who's bringing Ebonheart because it received a lot of nerfs in the last balance change. But I still believe that there is a room for it to be on a competitive level. So that's the reason why I brought it, because it's like a pet peeve of mine. So I like the deck.
Let's talk about you as a player, not your decks. Is there anything that you think you're gonna bring to the table that other players might not be able to? An X factor, certain preparation you did, anything that you think makes Boomslife is gonna carry you to the finals?
I'm not sure. Like, we're all great players. I mean, I am pretty experienced. I've been playing since before the open beta, so I've been playing for a long time. I've put in a lot of matches in this game, so I do think I'm experienced, but we're all great players, so do I have a specific edge against a certain player? I'm not sure.
How do you feel about Monk in the current meta? I know there's a lot of effort being put into a Waxwayne mid-range deck. Have you gotten a chance to play with that at all? Do you have any opinions on how that class could be doing right now? I noticed that no one brought that class to the tournament this week.
I think the Waxwayne Monk, I've tested it before it became a public deck, but my version didn't do that well. So when the actual version that is on ladder right now is being played, I kind of went in with the mindset from, it didn't work for me the first time, why would this, because there were pretty big changes, but I felt like it wasn't enough, so I decided to just skip out on the Waxwayne Monk. I did the Spilver Monk for this, obviously I had to test it, but I just didn't feel confident in it just yet. I think it's getting closer though to being playable on a competitive level with the latest expansion. I hope it gets a little bit more love in the next expansion. Like, it's like 1 or 2 cards away from being a real deck. So that's the main issue for me why I didn't bring Monk.
Give him all your energy in chat. Can't wait to see how you do.
Thank you.
Hey, favorite deck Ebonheart, only one who brought Ebonheart. Do we think that's well positioned now?
I think so. I think especially for this matchup, when you make that choice, you choose to bring a control deck that goes over the top of other control decks. Your ideal scenario is to sit across from someone who also brought control decks. So I think that that's what we could see with Frenzy again today.
Yeah, we get to see the Guildsworn deck on screen now, one of those ones we've seen all over the place. We do see the Seducer Darkfire, 3 copies there. What do we think we're planning to try and stave off there, Silver?
A potential of opponents' rages if you're against a Guildsworn Telvanni. I mean, the Uprising can actually be a pretty big factor, as we talked about earlier. The Tribunal, there's some removals you can deal with. Overall, I think Alfie Conjure, though, is the biggest one.
Yeah, that was the card I was most surprised to see looking through the deck list when they were submitted, is that Boomslife and Witta both sort of fell onto those Seducer Darkfires. So we'll see how Boomslife makes use of them. And there is the over-the-top control Ebonheart, which Boomslife played to a ton of success over the qualifiers. And even though several cards have received some nerfs, still the core of the deck of killing a bunch of stuff and staying alive until the late game remains the same, with, of course, the Flesh Atronach.
And specifically, the nerf of Defiler, which fulfilled a role in the deck that was to fill your entire board up toward the end of the game, you'll see is replaced by Tullius's Conscription.
I think, too, noticing in that there's two of the Flesh Atronachs, too. Now that Cast at a Time is nerfed, you can play that as a tempo play and not even need to play the Improvised Weapon or Rage or some kind of breakthrough weapon and Rage with it. So just being able to play as a high tempo play later in the game is important, too, because if your opponent can't remove it or silence it, that's a lot of damage.
And we see the Tribunal is the last deck that's going to round it out. Very classic control deck that we've seen lots and lots of iterations throughout the years. What do you think about this one? Anything catching your eye in particular?
More
Other than the
Seducer
three?
Darkfires.
Yeah, it's just seducers.
Easy answer. Got that out of the way. Anything catching your eye, Jason?
Well, I talked to Boomslife specifically about the Seducer Darkfires, and it seemed like 8 was what they were targeting, potential rages and opposing Dawn's Wraths. So we'll see whether or not that play works out.
All right, let's talk bans. What are we thinking?
I'm banning Ebonheart if I'm Frenzy. Like, I don't want to play against the over the top.
Is that just because of his confidence in it, or are you really just scared of the deck if you're Frenzy?
I think I'm scared of it. One, I don't know how often you've played against it since the nerf. That I'm not sure how. Like, I'm sure that he prepared a lot for this specific event, but in general, I think it lines up better.
All right, our players are ready to come on stage. Let's do it one more time. Let's welcome Boomslife and Frenzy up to their computers. To enter, only one may leave at a time. We don't want them tripping over the stairs. That'd be ridiculous.
Both of them wearing very white shoes. You think
Are
that's
they?
a meta call? Yeah, look at that.
Wow, those shoes
Shoes
are
are blinding.
very white.
Yeah. Polished in advance for the event. I respect that. Looking fresh, ready to play some Legends.
Yeah, that's fair. So we've seen the lineups, we've seen the decks, we know the players. What are we thinking here? Not asking for predictions quite yet. I don't think we're quite ready for that. But let's talk about at least the lineups. What are we thinking we start off with?
Well, I'm personally just surprised. Again, we see 2 Tribunal decks. It's not the most popular class nowadays, but both these players are slow. So I think we can finally safely say this is going to be kind of a grind fest, especially if the Ebonheart remains unbanned. Jason is so happy that it's a grind fest. He's like, this is what I've been waiting for. We all remember fondly watching Jason last year play in the top 4 and just wondering when he would attack.
Yes.
Wasn't one of his games like an hour and a half or something?
I don't know. I kind of probably like mentally checked out after a while.
I would look to play the mid-range decks first, Dagoth and Battle Mage, to kind of get those out of the way so that then the control matches can continue.
Can entertain us all into the night.
Exactly.
All right, we do have the bans in Frenzy, as you have predicted. Did ban away the Ebonheart Pact away from Boomslife. I think that makes a lot of sense. The late game is just really, really hard to deal with. On the other side, Frenzy will not be able to play that Guildsworn deck. Boomslife saying, I'm going to respect the ability for it to be so adaptable, so many ways for it to be a problem.
Yeah,
I think these bans make sense.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, we didn't really touch on it, but Boomslife, one of the only 2 players in the tournament to not bring that classic Battle Mage.
That's true. The Alfiq counter will not go up on his watch. Frenzy, it's a totally different story. Frenzy may play like as many Alfiqs as he wants.
Well, for the Dagoth deck, like, we can still, Boomslife could still play some Alfiqs, right?
That's
Yeah,
fair.
for sure.
It makes sense a lot, I think, to go ahead and ban the Guildsworn to make sure that Unstoppable Rages just aren't part of it. So I think that was a good choice.
So we see the bans, we've seen the deck lists. It's that time, once again, casters, predictions. We're going to start in the middle this time because we like to shake things up here. Jason, let me hear what are you thinking.
My prediction is Frenzy 3-2 in 2 hours and 13 minutes.
Everyone's like, please, no!
Silverfuse?
Oh, you're, okay.
I personally think this is probably like the closest and like hardest one to decide between the 2 players for me. I'm also gonna have to go with Frenzy in the 3-2 because I think it'll be really back and forth. Really, any player though, if you told me who won, wouldn't be surprised.
Non-committal from the other long hair bookend. I like it. CVH, what are you thinking?
I'm gonna go with Boomslife 3-2. He's playing his comfort zone. He's proven that he can pilot these decks over the course of the entire season. Pretty sad to see Ebonheart banned for him, but I think Boomslife is going to take it 3-2.
All right, let's go a little weird with the next question. Who do you think Super Thanks has the best matchup into next round, based on who wins this?
That's a little bit high level for me, don't you think?
Maybe let's how about from someone who's slightly less washed up, Silverfuse.
I think that the Evanhart Pact does not do very well into Super Thinks' lineup, so I think Super Thinks seeing Evanhart Pact would be helpful to him. Where Frenzy's lineup, seeing these more control-heavy decks would be, even though Boomslife has it too, I think Evanhart Pact is very good against the control, but not so good against the aggro and mid-range. So I think that Super Thinks would want Boomslife to win because of the Pact.
We can see our players studying up on stage, trying to figure out exactly what to lead off with. Bans are in. We already know, again, open deck lists. They can see exactly what they're coming up against. Is there any deck that is not banned that you think is going to be absolutely pivotal in this matchup? One that you really want to keep your eye on when it gets queued and how it performs?
I'm going to say Telvanni. I think Telvanni, before Evanhart, it really proved itself as that control deck that can sort of outvalue other control decks. We'll see if it can do so against Guildsworn and Tribunal. Might have a good matchup against Dagoth, depending on how pressuring of a start they get, but just on the nature of the fact that there are no other Telvanni decks there, it's probably going to decide something.
All right, well, it looks like we are ready to get into game. It is, in fact, starting the last of the quarterfinals before we move on to the semis. Casters, you ready now?
Let's do it.
Absolutely.
All right, take it away, guys.
All right, Boomslife versus Frenzy, and there's the Dagoth, the fastest deck Boomslife brought. So Jason is right. We're getting the mid-range aggressive stuff out of the way a little bit.
Jason's already planning for our long control matchups later.
right.
He's like, get these mid-range out, get them out.
And we see the hand.
Yeah, actually, I was thinking in a lot of these matchups, we've pegged Hand of Dagoth as a great way for Dagoth to sort of race and control against other aggressive decks. A lot of that is sort of out the window against Frenzy's lineup, but in this particular matchup, it could be incredibly strong. You know, Battle Mage doesn't have the greatest answers to it.
One of the things about Battle Mage is sometimes it risks running out of resources, and up until that Cradle Crush, Frenzy was looking like he had a pretty low-cost hand. They had the possibility of running out of steam.
Yeah, but even, you know, Cradle Crush Giant against Dagoth, there are some sources of 4 damage that Boomslife would come up with for sure.
Yeah, looking at the deck list last night, we were looking at the differences between all these mid-BM decks, and Frenzy had the deck with the lowest number of high-cost creatures overall. His top end was just a lot smaller, so we could see the potential of him not finding the top end that he needs against this Dagoth list.
Yeah, noticeably no Belligerent Giants, just capping out at Cradle Crush, Alfie Conjure, Mighty Conjuring, and Kano. And here comes potentially an unanswered Corner Club Gambler, which might put Boomslife far ahead in cards.
And really deciding to go into Shadow and not contest the field lane, looking to dictate this game immediately, make sure that the Battle Mage doesn't get its trade plan in.
Yeah, and this is actually a very critical turn for Frenzy to not have a play. You know, Alfie Conjure is fantastic, but at this point, the main thing for Frenzy here is that he has full control of the field lane, and he really can't capitalize on that at all. He has essentially no play here that makes a lot of sense for him to do, except for punching face for 5 or 3 if he doesn't want to break a rune. But there's really not a whole lot of development to be done until those 6 drops come online.
It's really the scary thing about playing mid is sometimes you draw the wrong portion. So with that increased number of 6 costs, sometimes you kind of choke on them.
Not breaking the rune. Even so, Boomslife is going to get a full grip of cards from this Corner Club Gambler, and he could even follow it up with another one.
Yeah, seeing that there was no answer there, we do know that Frenzy is running Channeled Storms, and we know the Channeled Storm wasn't an option last turn.
This might be handy.
Going full Shadow Lane, it looks like.
And really being able to utilize that Trinket Dagger, turning it into potentially new cards with a gamble.
Can we change the name to Steel Trinket? That's way better. I like that.
Once again, finding really the lower part of his curve, wanting to find the more mid-range things. He's on the ring too and isn't able to capitalize being able to play a higher control turn.
Yeah, right there, Frenzy would like anything that costs between, 3 and 5, but
The average cost of Frenzy's hand is right what he would like, but
yeah, the cards themselves don't really lend themselves to powerful turns, but like looking at his deck list, Daggerfall Mage, Manic Jack, Cunning Ally, Channeled Storm would have been amazing there to clear the recently played Corner Club Gambler, but just not seeing it.
I feel like on this turn as Frenzy, you want to be able to set up the Cradle Crush Giant in the future, maybe even using a Firebolt and the Crown Quartermaster. You do tip your hand a lot by doing that, but I think it's his only chance of being able to bounce back here.
Yeah, if you're Frenzy, you really need a big swing turn because right now the board is not in your favor and neither is the card advantage.
and really you don't have a choice. So it's going to be the best way, not just to come back, but it's really the only choice that you have at this stage because you haven't been given cards by Boomslife.
We'll see if Boomslife says, all right, he has
Here
the
they
Cradle
are.
Crush Giant, so I'm just going to deal some damage. Of course, if he has Cradle Crush Giant and he plays it, and that is the worst case scenario for him, you're pretty much free to play Hand of Dagoth knowing that that's not going to get answered as well.
Look at the options that Boomslife has in his hands. So many potential lines of play. Those gamblers really have paid off from a resource option standpoint.
Might even go for a play that just totally plays around the Cradle Crush, like a Ward Crafter on something that would have died, and maybe Sharpshooter to clear the 2-1 so it can't trade with the other 3 health creature. So Cradle Crush might only kill 1 creature in that case. That'd be very disappointing.
Yeah, and as we said, just seeing the Firebolt come down, seeing the Crown Quartermaster, it let Boomslife know that, hey, that is what is in his hand. Like, why else would you just Firebolt that for no reason? So
Yeah.
being able to just play around that excellent hand reading, and I think we'll see exactly what you're saying, is just keeping everything alive except for the Crown Quartermaster.
The players have access to each other's deck lists, but identifying which cards they're likely to have based on the play they've made in the last 2 turns or so is a very important skill. And if Boomslife didn't have that skill, this could be going much worse for him.
And you can see from that skill we saw earlier in the day, Cradle Crush being played around, and here Booms expertly played around the potential, minimizing it. So you're really seeing this top-level play and the players understanding what could come up and adapting as a result.
Yep, I need my 1 health creatures to have ward, and I need my other stuff to have at least 3 health. And that's a lot of unanswerable damage right now. Ward Crafter's gonna die. That's probably it. And the other 2-1.
Yeah, I mean, there's a chance. There's the option for Alfiq. There's also the option for the Skaven, getting off a little bit of damage, getting off a ward, and the Cunning Ally. Even though you can't play the Bolt, just having bodies on the board to try to deal with the Shadow.
For bodies without guard means that Frenzy would take a lot of damage on the next turn, putting him within range of the ranged Dragon Knight, getting closer. Not quite lethal, but starting to get close.
I really like that card too. It's one of the new consume cards we're seeing. Boomslife has a lot of ways to pack on extra damage between the Dragon Knight, Swift Strikes, Battle Mace, Lightning Bolt, Cliff Racer. Being put at 4 or 6 is not where you want to be against Boomslife.
So yeah, going with a line of placing the bodies into the shadow, hoping that this attack, even though it's going to take Frenzy low, that if Frenzy can survive this onslaught, then maybe start to mount a comeback, but with a low life total.
Yeah, it's important to note that there are no lightning bolts in Frenzy's list, so that is not one of the outs here if Boomslife does decide to attack, which I assume he would. There is Harpy though, so a Harpy at the right time could be really important. We've seen Harpy be really, really strong in previous matches.
Yeah, I think a single Prophecy would definitely be almost required at this point. 2 would be really strong. But it looks like 10 damage is coming in unanswered, putting Frenzy down to 6. And in case there was a powerful action or 2 in hand, it looks like Withered Hand Cultist is going to come down. Going for, if he's in the field lane, that actually does put it weak to Steel Dagger, which we know Frenzy has from the Crown Quartermaster.
And knowing that the Cunning Ally hit the following turn, and a Firebolt is one of the ways that Frenzy can help turn things, Withered Hand makes a lot of sense.
We must remain steadfast.
Going for the field, and I think this is just so there's room for potentially Gambler's Shadow.
Care to make a friendly
That is a lot of gamblers.
Yeah.
It's a casino.
By turn 6 too. I don't think I've seen that before.
Yeah, they all look so smug. That's definitely when you want to draw them. They're really bad later in the game, but right now it's fine. Oh, so this is really, really sad because Frenzy has the Rapid Shot and the Cradle Crush, which together could be a full clear with 7 Magicka. He has the ring, so it's possible, but the Withered Hand Cultist is stopping that. He has to spend a Magicka to use Steel Dagger first, and then he doesn't have enough for Rapid Shot plus Cradle Crush.
I was gonna say, I don't think he really needs it though. He can use the Steel Dagger, clear the Withering Cultist. He has the Rapid Shot and Firebolt anyway, and just his creatures trade alright in. He gets rid of a lot of damage here, but it's prone to, I mean, Reach is still very scary.
Yeah, so if you do that, you're essentially, counting this right, you have to leave the 2/2, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we know right now that Boomslife doesn't have a source of 4 damage, but
Yeah.
there are a ton of them in his deck.
Battle Mace and Cliff Racers are pretty scary overall.
Yep, Lightning Bolt, Razumdar deals 4 damage. Another Dragon Knight over 2 turns would do it. But it looks like options are limited for Frenzy here.
Down to the wire.
Oh, going for this line, actually leaving up the Gambler. And that actually makes him weak to the 2 damage source, right?
So now we're going to see that
That's
Dragon
it.
Knight or the Scimitar.
Yeah, Scimitar too.
I would have Dragon Knighted, just saying.
All right, we'll pretend it was Dragon Knight, but Boomslife goes up
Great
1
job.
game. Wow, that was really impressive from Dagoth. Again, we see that deck do a lot of work. Anyone surprised at that outcome? Or do we kind of expect Dagoth to be favored against Battle Mage? What do you think?
I think against some of the mid BMs that are running the more higher top end, I think they might be a little bit more favored to the Dagoth just as the consistent threats. But Frenzy's more of an anti-aggro build. I would say he's a lot more the lower drops, and I think that hurts him in that matchup in particular.
Yeah, and to be fair, we saw all 3 Corner Club Gamblers played and resolved with no interaction. You got to think that those Channel Storms are in Frenzy's mid-battle mage, as among other things, to answer cards like Corner Club Gambler before they get out of hand. But we never saw them. So Boomslife was free to draw as many cards as he needed to find the damage that he needed to close the game. That's exactly what happened. So yeah, we'll see Boomslife again in this last class standing format remain on the Dagoth deck. Frenzy's Battle Mage is now eliminated, leaving him with either Telvanni or Tribunal, which I'm sure are Jason's 2 favorite decks to see.
I do enjoy it, and I expect Tribunal here. I think it matches up really well with the Dagoth. So I would look for Frenzy to try to remove Dagoth from the equation with the removal packages that you see in Tribunal.
Yeah, do you think Telvanni might just get pressured too much from the kind of aggressive Boomslife's Dagoth deck is bringing?
Exactly. I think that some of the warded threats, some of the difficult to remove items, Telvanni has a difficulty getting control of, whereas Tribunal, that's really its bread and butter.
Yeah, but down the line, of course, if the Tribunal comes out now, later in the match, we might see Telvanni try to answer some of Boomslife's slower decks. Because he did bring them. It's the Dagoth deck that really packs a punch that we just saw. What was that, a turn 7 victory, I think?
I believe so, because
Yeah.
we said with 3 Corner Club Gamblers on 6. So I think that was 7.
Yeah. So not Karakonjin fast, but still pretty fast. For a Dagoth, that's definitely fast. And actually, one of the most interesting tech cards to me in the Dagoth deck is the 1 Memory Wraith. You think that'll...
As the potential Alfiq Conjurer, remove your discard pile so that you can't consume.
Yeah, on turn 5. That's pretty heads up.
It's a pretty
Yeah.
big static creature, so maybe.
Yeah. I think if it was going to be super relevant, it might have been in that matchup. We will see what Frenzy decides to queue between his 2 slower decks, the Tribunal and the Telvanni. Try to take on Boomslife's Dagoth. Also the only person in the tournament, I think, running Prowl Smuggler. Is that correct?
I think
Oh, is
it
that
might
not
be.
correct?
We had a Prowl Smuggler earlier
Oh,
and
we
Witta's aggressive Battle
Oh.
Mage.
Okay, so
So
yeah, they tested
They
together.
tested
so that
together,
makes
so
sense,
it makes total sense.
yeah. That's really cool how different testing groups come to different solutions, you know? Because the same meta exists for everybody, but depending on who you test with, it can seem very different. So Frenzy wound up on Telvanni, other people wound up on Memory Wraith and Prowl Smuggler.
Yeah, we spoke a lot about Please Don't Hack Me, and I'm sure that a lot of the decisions of what he plays informed what Frenzy decided to play in the same way with Witta and Boom.
Yeah, I'm almost even a little surprised we don't see Nyx Ox. He loves that card so much, right?
He does.
All right, we're in game now. Boomslife is still on the Dagoth, and Frenzy has switched, like you said, to the Tribunal deck. See how this shakes down. Frenzy hoping to knock Boomslife's Dagoth out of contention. Prowl Smuggler right on time.
This one will hunt
And the Memory
you
Wraith
down.
in reserve for later. No Alfiq, though, in the Tribunal deck to potentially hit, though.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to do a whole lot against this Tribunal deck. I can't really think of a... I mean, I guess you play it as a 5/5, of course, but yeah, there doesn't seem to be any graveyard interaction in the Tribunal deck.
Other than the Ande Clan Sorcerer possibly getting a Raised Dead,
Oh, yeah,
I-
that could happen.
Tawaka
Withered Hand
watches
Cultist on turn 3 against Tribunal, but these are more creature-based Tribunal decks nowadays.
Yeah,
So-
it used to be before that Tribunal with her and Cultist sometimes kind of felt like an instant win just because how polarized it was. But now it's like, well, I'm playing creatures anyway. You're kind of playing a lower stated body. Well,
Yeah, it's
3 mana, 3/4.
actually affecting Boomslife's own hand a lot more than it's affecting Frenzy right now.
And those are cards that you really want to see later in the game. Both the Swift Strike and the Lightning Bolt are cards that you don't necessarily want to see early.
Yeah, a lot of the reach tools on hand right now, and really making the options limited here. Playing a Dagoth Oathman that doesn't proc is a 3 mana 3/3, but that's your turn 4 play. And in this aggressive, well, in this part, he is the aggressor against Frenzy, who's playing control. That isn't what you want to see here.
Definitely not, but it looks like it's what he's going to have to do. We'll see if he takes the opportunity here to trade with the Clan Sorcerer or actually push 3 damage. Goes for the trade. And now Frenzy's free to ring out an incredibly powerful card at this stage of the game, the Phalanx Exemplar.
Yeah, Exemplar and Thadon in the future too. Thadon could just make Frenzy win this game on his own. If he's able to deal with Boomslife's creatures and then draw consistently over and over again, the resource extension of that, I mean, just, that is a really, really good card for Frenzy to see right now.
And you can see from the stat line of the Phalanx Exemplar, 5/6 guard on a 5 cost body. Compare that to the memory rate that's in Boomslife's hand. So even though that does a very unique thing, a 5/5 versus a 5/6 just feels trumped.
You gotta be feeling good if you're in Frenzy's board state right now, and it looks like Booms is gonna say, I don't want to lose 2 creatures to that. I will lose 1, but I'm just gonna start playing things in the Shadow Lane and hope that that gets me through the day.
Wanting to set up for the Mighty Conjuring in the future, although can't play it next turn, but in following turns after that, getting that large threat on the board could be really useful for him.
Yeah, it looks like both players are trying to set up for Mighty Conjuring, so this might come down to, let's see whose Atronach lives and is able to control the pace of the game.
Yeah, because Frenzy here, it's kind of awkward because he has to decide, do I play something low tempo like the Skinned Hound and save this ring charge, hopefully to play the Mighty Conjuring, or do I just get this Thadon developed right now?
Yeah, that's very tempting. It's a 6/7 in the Shadow Lane, so as long as Frenzy's able to consistently play the largest thing in that lane, he will draw 2 cards a turn.
Yeah, and Skinned Hound, funny enough, being able to add 2 extra health makes it even more likely that he keeps control of that Thadon lane.
Absolutely. So Boomslife is able to actually get aggressive here, finally deal some damage. Another Mighty Conjuring for Frenzy. We might just see chain Mighty Conjurings for a few turns with these 2 players.
And we're looking for a way for Boomslife to be able to trigger his Mighty Conjuring, and it's looking rough since that memory wraith probably won't last the turn.
Yeah, that's really tough. And Crown Quartermaster gives you a dagger, but he has nothing even with 4 attack that he can buff up and set up for it. And of course, if the Thadon survives and remains at 6/7, isn't lightning bolted or anything, Frenzy is going to draw an extra card at the start of his turn, thanks to the Mania lane.
Just more options is what I need, because right now his next turn is not very strong, so getting 2 cards, giving you a few extra options could be really, really good for Frenzy here.
Frenzy's really doing what Tribunal does best. Things are starting to slow down and swing in his favor.
So as Frenzy here, would you be feeling pretty good then?
I would be.
I think so. Being at 25 on turn 6 with a Thadon that survived, being able to, especially with a draw to fill out your curve with the Varen Ecolarios.
Oh, that's so good here. Like, there are times when it's not good, as Charmer points out a lot. This is one of those times when I think, you can even make it a giant guard.
Similar to the situation that Boomslife is in, is looking at Mighty Conjurings that might not trigger. It's really the Mighty Conjuring can be like a terrific card, but it is conditional.
Yeah, and it looks like Frenzy is well equipped to meet that condition next turn and the turn after that. Unless Boomslife can come up with some miraculous answer here. Does he just have to silence the Varen to push a little bit of damage and prevent that thing from steamrolling the entire game? Like, if that effect is allowed to survive, there's no real way to win the game because of all the extra health it'll provide over the course of the next few attacks.
If it survives, Frenzy threatens to not attack again and win.
Oh, yeah. In about 25 minutes.
Exactly. Really gives an attrition tool with this Dagoth drawing all of its reach early. Boom's looking for an opportunity, a line where lethal could possibly be found. But in the meantime, these cards are clunkers.
Yeah. All right, Mini lane draws a card, gets some drain in the hand. It's, you know, it's always welcome in case Frenzy happens to dip low, but with 2 Mighty Conjurings, it looks like he's well equipped to take over the board.
That field lane's Phalanx Exemplar.
Yeah, it won the field lane very quickly.
This battle
now
mace
it's winning.
is really, really good here. Able to now take care of this lava afterknock, where before there was no answer to it.
That is good, but the one thing you really hate to see after getting rid of one Atronach is another one.
Especially after you just top deck the answer
Yeah.
to get rid of it.
And he knows the 8-2 is going to get traded into at the very least by Skintown. And then we can see some of the other more almost mid-rangey creatures in Frenzy's deck, the proactive tools like Young Mammoth, Dragon Tail Savior, which can fight for the board if need be, but also just help you pack on the damage later when you're setting up for that strike.
Really a change you've started to see in Tribunals more and more is the respecting the stat line. So even though it feels like Dragon Tail Savior is a card that is aggressive traditionally in the Orc decks, it also plays really well as a 3/3 for 2.
Boomslife actually rolls the Guard Atronach, which you definitely don't want to see here because it basically marks it for death immediately. Even though it's in the Shadow lane, it won't gain cover because it has Guard.
La da da dee da. No, that's not right.
That is right, as you see some large Luzra and Lava Atronach action.
You will
Yeah, and
fare
the
no
correct
better.
attack order there for Frenzy doesn't want to break through and give Boomslife any cards through a Rune Break. Wants to leave him at a comfortable 26.
Will keep you safe.
And still the lane change with the card draw. Frenzy continues to have additional resources, so there's no way that Boomslife can
Before the 6th
interact.
Ooh, you could attack Alfie Conjure, then Mana Marco it back, and get rid of the other Atronach and play a Storm Atronach, right?
I'd do it.
That's pretty great. You could do something else too, but I think this is definitely the fun play.
Mana Marco, I just want to see the animation.
Yeah, it's so good.
So
Give the
good.
people the animation. There aren't that many Mana Marcos in the tournament. I think we've earned it. It's getting the rally buff.
And the rally, it's telling you, the game says, hey, remember me?
Da dee da da.
I don't know if it's the
I'll
same
get
play,
this
but I'll be
yet.
very upset if we don't see it now.
Oh.
Yeah, this play is pretty much undoubtedly better.
It's very good.
Yeah. There we go. See the concede from Boomslife. And Frenzy ties it 1-1 with his proactive Tribunal control. Leaving Boomslife with Guildsworn and his own Tribunal to queue next. That was a really impressive showing from the Tribunal deck, and if I remember, that's the first time we've seen that so far today, right?
Well, it also got banned
It
earlier.
did. Multiple times, yeah.
So I would expect to see Booms consider queuing the Tribunal into a Tribunal versus Tribunal game. What do you think?
Do you think that's what you hope to see or want or think you'll see?
I want to see the Eben, or the.
We can't
it's
see
what-
the
sorry.
Ebonheart.
I do want to see the Ebonheart. Sorry. that's
Dream
that's what I-
deferred.
No, I think that matches up well, and I think that it's an opportunity for both players to see how they run that archetype.
Well, you are right. That is what's happening.
Oh, is that what's
I
happening?
saw a little cheat.
Oh, nice. Looks like we're getting ready for the game here, and hopefully it's that Tribunal Mirror match. If not, Guildsworn's fun too, but we don't get to see too many Tribunal Mirror matches anymore, and looks like we get our wish here. Frenzy and Boomslife both on Tribunal at 1-1.
Yeah, it's Jason's dream.
Absolutely. And then what you see out of Boom's Tribunal is the more traditional style with the Necromancer kept in the hand. Boomslife knows that this game is probably going to go long, making plans already for turn 6 and beyond.
Absolutely. It's kind of interesting that, yeah, they are slightly different variants. It'll be interesting how to see how they sort of interact. Like Boomslife has cards like the Merchant's Camel, which, you know, they aren't very high tempo at all, but they're the classic control cycling tools, so Boomslife can find the cards that he needs and sort of out attrition Frenzy.
And also see the card that we've been talking about quite a bit, the potential Seducer Darkfires later. That's a big
Yes.
difference.
Very excited for that. And Frenzy's probably going to try to pressure Boomslife out of the game.
Yeah, I would say that in most cases, Frenzy would be the aggressor in this matchup, just because it does have that little bit more of the mid-rangey flavor. But missing his early curve here was quite rough, and more so when we see Boomslife has a pretty clunky hand to begin with, but it's going to even out here as the match goes up.
And Frenzy's going to, he may struggle to put adequate pressure considering that there's a lot of removal on Frenzy's hand, whereas a typical mid deck might not play removal, it might just play additional bodies.
Yeah, so there's a lot of, like there's cards that can't really pressure. Like Channeled Storm is okay to clear guards, but against a deck like this, I mean, it's not going to provide too much pressure. Golden Initiate's not really in its peak efficiency level against a control deck, and we're several turns from Rock. But that card can actually provide a ton of pressure.
So, if you were to get to the point where we see Laneth played, what do you think you'd end up searching for? What becomes the game winner here?
What do you think, Jason? I have no idea.
Typically Sothis, I would expect that would be the type of thing that could lock down the game and bring it home for Boomslife.
I'd say that.
But I think it's probably more likely that we might be in a spot because Frenzy's pressuring Boomslife that if Laneth is played, it might be for a direct reactive tool.
I could definitely see that. I found myself searching for Archcannon Serioni a ton, just because of the amount of drain it can pack on immediately, especially after Alaneth. It usually is what seals the deal if there's time to play them both.
This is an interesting choice from Frenzy, with the ability to use the ring to get out the Phaedon, but you lose the ring charge, so it means that the Marak is even later, but that potential for all of the resource advantage if Phaedon in the field lane can survive, especially if you have two large health creatures.
Looks like that's what we're going to see, and we're not going to see any more attacks from Frenzy, valuing the potential for a prophecy a little too high. It could be a little too backbreaking there.
And Boomslife wasn't happy seeing that Phaedon come down again. Once again, that is a card that determines these games because now you're forced to fight for that field lane. You can't just say, I'm going to ignore it and let my opponent draw an infinite number of cards. You are now more or less forced to deal with it in one way or another.
And we're looking at the Dawn's Wrath taking several turns before it would be able to take back that field lane clean. So in the interim, Boomslife's trying to scrape together some response to that field lane, considering Ice Storm just to drop the health or playing the Necromancer.
Really, yep, Necromancer comes down, brings back Barrowstalker, which will soak up a little bit of damage, he hopes, and maybe chip away at the high health of these two creatures.
A lot of these games come down to resource battles, so if you're able to pressure, and you can safely break runes if you're also getting resources. So you don't want to go totally empty, but that Phaedon, it really puts you in a good spot to be able to pressure and still win an attrition game late.
Very scary card, for sure. Now Frenzy, though, he doesn't draw into a ton of ways to keep up the pressure. He has a bunch of smaller creatures that he could dump on the board, but with Boomslife's potential Ice Storm, that might not necessarily work out too well for him. See what Frenzy decides to go with.
Yeah, really, Frenzy's in the driver's seat here, just having control of this field lane and then having things to follow up on it as well. Boomslife is hoping more or less for the Dawn's turn, trying to get a lot of value out of that and maybe finding a way to flip the board after that. But seeing his hand, a lot of it being actions and not many creatures, it's going to be hard to do that.
Yeah, all actions except for good old Laneth.
And that Harpy's a big play. It prevents the Necromancer from being able to attack the 4-2 and really make Ice Storm as a viable option. Maybe what he has to do anyway.
Yeah, that is super annoying. I mean, Boomslife does now have a little bit of better options, like Casting the Time if he chooses to go that route. He could maybe use Casting the Time plus Execute maybe to deal with the 2-1 or Negation on the 3-3, attack it with the Camel. There are a few ways he could conserve the Ice Storm if he thinks he can get a better one in following turns. We do have Dawn's Wrath still in the tank.
Frenzy is threatening to expand beyond Dawn's Wrath's reach with the Initiate pushing into the Shadow. So it may turn into a world where Ice Storm matters a little bit more than we thought before.
Yeah, he's using Negation, but not to clear anything immediately, just to set up for the Ice Storm.
And this tips Frenzy off pretty well that there's an Ice Storm coming, but it didn't do quite as much because the Necromancer couldn't trade in, so it's being set up for here, plus a little bit of damage removed with the cast and the time.
And another big point of that negation was it put the defense of the 4-5 into a 4-3, so the defense was the same as the Necromancer's defense, so the lane trigger did not proc.
Yeah, that's actually really important too.
Effectively negating a card that Frenzy would have drawn.
Boomslife can somehow starve Frenzy on resources. It'll be a lot less likely that he gets pressured out of the game. Channeled Storm deals a ton of damage now if he really wants to kill that Camel or the Necromancer.
wisely, playing around the Ice
Watch
Storm.
yourself now.
It does indeed. Unfortunately, Boomslife also has Sorcerer's Negation and 8 Magicka, so he can clear almost the entire board anyway.
And really, Frenzy is looking at not having a ton of resources after the fact. It's still a long time before Marak is going to be a valid threat.
Yeah, Ice Storm and Javelin are fantastic cards, but they do almost nothing to pressure. And there we see Odoving pop up on screen. That's threatening to clear any second wave of creatures Frenzy manages to piece together off the top of his deck in a few turns.
In the Seducer Darkfire.
Yes. So what do you choose on Seducer?
Well, I'd probably choose 11. No,
That's fair. Caster knowledge, caster vision.
It was pretty painful here for Boomslife having to leave at 2-1 and letting that draw Frenzy another card.
Yeah. But that's why Frenzy did the correct thing there and made 2 of his creatures in the field lane resilient. Doesn't matter what you have in the field lane. If it's the only thing, then it has default the highest defense, the highest health rather, and you can start going up the Mania lane again. Boomslife would really like to find a way to clear it all.
Oh, we're going to see it.
I think.
I hope so.
You can execute along with it, and it does have the highest health in the lane, so it's a good way to not let Frenzy draw off the Mania lane with the Hive Defender.
And you're still at 11, so you still have a little bit of wiggle room.
Yeah, this is probably the only chance you have to play Lance if you want to, but I don't really think there's a card that he digs for that wins him this game, and he has plenty of resources in hand.
It looks like we're going to see it. I think otherwise we would have seen maybe Dawn's Wrath just to make sure your Frenzy doesn't draw.
Walk.
What will he choose?
You choose 5, and even though we know that the Javelin's there, it's pretty common for Tribunal to have 5 called. They're known for their 5 calls removals.
Yep, that looks like the case.
And Mighty Conjuring can't be procced here because there is no 5 attack or higher creature. Does find the Emperor's Blade, which could be alright here, but still isn't going to be able to win back the lane.
Yeah, Emperor's Blade and Javelin would be a nice play.
That's a pretty relevant Seducer Darkfire, wouldn't you say?
I would say that, indeed. I'm very excited because I don't think I've ever been able to say that sentence before while looking at a tournament game. Yeah, that card really snuck up out of nowhere, you know? A product of Boomslife's and Witta's testing before the event. And I don't think anyone else was really on the Seducer Darkfire train. Oh, and the Golden Initiate, too.
That's a huge prophecy
Speak,
here,
citizen.
representing life gain, so that Boomslife's drawn the cards from the rune breaks and now has a potential to regain that life at very little cost.
Yeah, that kind of almost makes you want to Ice Storm. Doesn't feel great, for sure.
Yeah, effectively, Ice Storm would prevent 3 drain. Frenzy's trying to eke out every little bit of damage, so this is probably it might be the best that Ice Storm is going to be.
And even though Boomslife's at a relatively low life total, it's not like Frenzy's deck, despite being pressuring, has access to a lot of reach. There's no lightning bolts in it, right? So, and I don't think.
It's a good opportunity, too, to talk about the fate on lane that now the Seducer Darkfire is drawing you cards.
Yeah, Boomslife has turned that into a positive. He's going to try to keep the Seducer Darkfire alive, I think.
I think so, too.
You could probably get away with like trade and maybe just, you know, Lana for the maybe
Sothis
Serioni or something, or Sothis. I'd still probably want to gain some health, honestly. Like even though I'm at 8 against the no lightning bolt deck, and maybe you want to play it a little safe.
Yeah, I think playing Serioni here,
What
pretty
secrets
good deal
do you
overall.
seek?
This will let, if the trade goes through, it will let Frenzy have access to his. Oh wait, no, it doesn't even die. Who knew? I can't read the health of the cards. I'll be over here if you need me. Serioni's now in the hand.
Frenzy with no lightning bolts is potential reach, too. So that just one Serioni swing probably put Boomslife into a very safe territory.
Yeah, I think there's a good chance here that Boomslife will just end up flipping this game over. Where before Frenzy was looking like he was in a really good position, getting the early card draw going, and then now Boomslife being able to stabilize and lock out Frenzy out of the Javelin, which has been a huge deal. If this Seducer Darkfire would have been a different cost card, it would have died pretty quickly, and I think Frenzy would have been back in the driver's seat.
And none of Frenzy's plays are great this turn. He has the Mighty Conjuring, which maybe it rolls Storm. You know, maybe you can get a Storm Matcher knock out of it, but in that case, It's not like Boomslife doesn't have Marat to steal it back if he wants.
That Dragon Tail Savior, the power, if it comes down on the field lane, is 4. Just one shy
Yeah.
of being able to trigger that Mighty Conjuring. You almost want to slip Boomslife a target or a makeshift defenses to...
Oh, slip Frenzy for the country. Or we're just going to see a nice 4-5. Hey, look, he's drawing all. It's just too many cards to draw. Boomslife's been playing one card a turn.
An embarrassment of riches.
He seems to have what he needs here.
So maybe deciding because there's enlightened bolts at 8 health feels like that's enough, and just being able to develop a massive board by taking this 4 or 5. I can't really disagree with him on it.
So now we do see an answer to Seducer Darkfire finally in the 11-cost Maroc. Then being able to potentially lock out some plays from Boomslife or offer a trade with Lanath.
Yep. We know with caster vision that it might just die to a firebolt. Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, if he doesn't answer any part of this board, the Archcannon Serioni does provide, with all the blessings, enough damage for Boomslife to push lethal. So Frenzy has to answer something here. And Javelin is currently off the table, thanks to the Seducer Darkfire. So it's really just Maroc, or like maybe you play Mighty Conjuring and you hope for the guard, but even that isn't really contesting too well. You still don't prevent Archcannon Serioni from coming down to gaining a bunch of life.
Yeah, I feel like there's a good chance we see the Maroc in one lane that steals something in the other lane just because that's your best way of contesting the board.
Actually goes for the Lana, doesn't steal the Darkfire. Says you have enough cards anyway, it's not like I'm going to be running too much.
Saying I don't have 5s anyway. What did you think? That was effective or something?
Looks like Boomslife can play 5 Magicka worth of creatures before he goes for the Serioni if he wants to do that this turn.
Taking the Laneth also made sure that the lane condition
By the fires of
that's a big
oblivion.
deal too.
Yes.
The Tribunal will always count.
It's easy to forget about those altered lanes as the game goes on, but these guys are pros, so they'll remember it. All 3 blessings. Draws him a card with the Spider Worker, buffs everything on the board by 1/1, and gives the now warded Darkfire Drain.
That is a very glowy Darkfire.
It is. I love it. And we're back at 16, just like that.
With an immense board.
So Jason, you never swing here, right?
Never. It's scary.
There could be 8 lightning bolts.
Here we go.
And this is why.
Speak, citizen.
Doesn't seem that bad, Jason.
It seems pretty good.
It's pretty good. But
I think that if I was Frenzy, I would take that hit to make sure that I get the drain and the ability to kill that Darkfire. That's a terrific turn of events for Frenzy.
that does sort of open up, you know, you can Javelin something else now. You can develop the Mighty Conjuring. We'll see if it turns out to be enough.
But Boomslife has been sitting there accumulating cards, and now with a healthy life total, it's going to be really hard to push back without tools like Dawn's Wrath or something else, a big switch. I don't think
Both players are playing Dawn's Wrath.
Yes.
Frenzy
Boomslife
has
is
two.
playing more. We'll see him attempt to clear a few things this turn, no doubt. It is pretty annoying that the everything got buffed, so the Emperor's Blade is just 1 health away from treating with Marat cleanly.
And it's got to be scary to even play the Mighty Conjuring. With the number of cards that Boomslife has drawn, the expectation that there could be a spot removal for the Lava Atronach is so high that it doesn't have the same type of oomph that you'd expect. in
Yeah,
other
a turn
matchups.
12 Conjuring is definitely different from a turn 7 Conjuring.
But you got to do it. And luckily for Frenzy, there's no clean way I don't see to kill it in one swing. Don't want to Dawn's that lane.
We do have the Channel Storm and Firebolt.
It's true.
The Firebolt for removing the ward, also pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, he can definitely deal with it, and he does so in a way where he'll retain a bunch of cards in his hand, so Boomslife can sort of take a little bit off of being the aggressor just to clean up a little bit after that very aggressive attack.
See Channeled Storm empowered to be able to take out the Atronach, and looks like Boomslife will continue the aggressive push, which is, I guess, okay.
You're really hoping this goes the distance, huh?
You're expecting another hour, right?
At the ready.
Emperor is played in one lane. Maybe a Piercing Twilight in the other. Maybe a Tome the Cycle. And there we go. Now it's Frenzy's turn to try to answer 6 creatures again.
Yeah. There's no Oda Ving in Frenzy's list, so that wasn't really a factor into Boomslife's decision here as well.
Yeah, that's a good call.
The longer the
You can answer
odds,
one lane
the easier
sometimes,
to die.
and both lanes none of the time.
Here we go with the 2-cost Dragon Tail being able to trigger the Lava Atronach, creating a pretty effective speed bump. But
Boomslife is very close to lethal here.
Frenzy's life total is getting down there.
One lightning bolt in hand. Is Boomslife finds another one, or maybe a silence. There we go.
Oh my.
Yep.
Shadowfen Priest, that is a huge draw.
It certainly is. So some attacks here, and then silencing the guard and the ward, and yeah, with no prophecy, that's going to do it. Boomslife is going to take the Tribunal mirror match and go up 2-1 in the series, now on match points. He's happy with that. He's happy he found the answer, and that's the benefit of playing the cards like Merchant's Camel. When you finally do start to pressure your opponent after stabilizing, then you have those tools to really find whatever you need. You have all the answers, hopefully, at your disposal. And it was really cool that game how he took back the Mania lane, too. I think that was really the deciding point of the game, where Frenzy stops drawing 2 cards a turn.
And you can see in the control matches, sometimes those early turns just don't matter. When the Merchant Camel is one of your significant first plays, and you're able to almost invite your opponent to break some of your runes, giving you some resources, and then able to use those resources for turnabout.
Yeah, Silverfuse, is that how you'd expect that to go, or do you think that Frenzy just sort of missed out on the cards he needed to pressure a little bit more?
I would say I think Frenzy missed out on the early cards. I mean, Exemplar was like his first like big tempo play. He missed out on his like Dragon Tail Savior and stuff early on, which I think that Boomslife might have needed a prophecy to kind of help him out there, but he got the game he wanted. He got to play it slow. You don't like seeing that pattern, but besides that, that was a pretty ideal game for Boomslife, not getting pressured too much early on.
Absolutely, and here we are in Game 4. Frenzy down to his Telvanni deck, which he will need to defeat Boomslife's Tribunal and Guildsworn with. And he starts off strong with a Tree Minder.
Traditionally, you'd expect that Telvanni would have a good matchup here.
A lot of Frenzy's hand currently is very anti-aggro. And Boomslife, as we mentioned, is not playing an aggro deck here. You have Viper to take care of threats, Vigilant Ancestor, Wardcrafter, and Queen, of course, which you've seen decide some aggressive matches
I
earlier.
am the Queen Mother.
That's Seducer
Attend me.
Darkfire in Boom's hand.
So what do you target in this matchup? Is it Uprising? Is it maybe Conscription if it hasn't been played yet? But there is only one Conscription, so that feels kind of bad, right? Like,
It's Uprising. Uprising
I would
is the
say
key
it's
into this
Uprising.
match, for sure.
Uprising is a value generator here that Frenzy needs to pretty much outvalue his other control opponent. So I think it's definitely Uprising.
see if he agrees. Frenzy with some pretty solid options here. Take care of this board without losing too much at all.
Frenzy with 3 Hallowed Death Priests, which is a potential answer to the Seducer Darkfire if you can draw.
It's a crazy meta development that we're playing Seducer Darkfire to block our opponents from playing things, and then playing Hollow Death Priest to block our opponents from playing Seducer Darkfire.
I did not predict that.
No, I don't think anyone did. Oh, and Thadon is going to come down early this time for Boomslife. We'll see if this works out for him. We do see that Frenzy already has the Necromancer in hand, which can easily bring back the Territorial Viper that we just saw used last turn.
Frenzy really has an option to go a few different, severely different lines here, with the Sun and Shadows to potentially play a really long grindy game with Conscription, or choose to be a little bit more aggressive with the Wardcrafter, try to own the field lane and take Thadden out.
What would you do?
I would Necromancer every time.
All right,
A Viper for a 6/7, taking care of the field.
it's pretty good. I mean, you could Wardcrafter it if you. That's probably
Yeah.
not right. You
No.
could probably Wardcrafter the
Could.
Queen though.
And I think seeing the Sun and Shadow changes your game plan a little bit, just knowing that you can get future value out of the Necromancer as well if it's left up. I assume that Boomslife deals with it in one way or the other.
So the Mentor's Ring is mostly for value in this deck, right? Because he's not playing Flesh Astronaut, so there's no potential one-turn kill.
Well, Wardcrafter Mentor's Ring is just insane. Just being able to ward up your whole thing, especially against Tribunal, all of a sudden, like, Dawn's is still great, but Ice Storm is pretty much doesn't do much creature-to-creature combat. You're in favor. So overall, it's just kind of it is a closeout tool is what I would call it. Even though it's not necessarily OTKing, just being able to make a board that can be dealt with is important.
Here we see the Darkfire. Maybe. What do you think? I'm itching for it. I'm itching for the number. What do you think?
If he plays it?
If he plays it, what number do you think?
Jeez. This is why I don't play Seducer Darkfire. I didn't test with this card. 8 because I see an 8 in the hand. It's definitely not. I mean, at this point in the game, though, like if he played it in field lane, it would get cleared immediately. It's not like Uprising is too insane here.
There's also some risk in future turns of Boomslife overdrawing if he plays one large play. So playing 2 makes sure that it puts Frenzy in a situation where Frenzy has to decide whether or not to push and break a rune. If you're going to potentially overdraw your opponent, you definitely break the rune.
Yeah, that makes sense. Boomslife's one of his top priorities has to be making sure he doesn't lose the Mania lane. He just sort of used that strategy to win his last game. So it would be quite sad to play that on and then have Frenzy sort of pull that one on him.
I was going to say, this looks like a great turn to just kind of find the resources you want, playing Camel, and then could play Sun and Shadow as well. Because of the slow tempo turn from Boomslife, Frenzy has the ability to kind of just play what he wants and find the pieces he's looking for.
An opportunity now that the Thorn Hissmage is in there to really accelerate toward those endgame tools like the Conscription, like the
Must I do
Uprising.
everything myself?
It will be a 5-drop.
My expectation is a Thorn Hissmage.
I'm going to say Sun and Shadow.
I think I'm going to say Sun and Shadow just because his mage can be used as a defensive tool later in the trade in, and you can pick where you're going. Although, when in doubt, ramp it out.
When in doubt, ramp it out. Yep, okay. Sounds good. 42 is the life total, and Boomslife probably doesn't really care too much about that yet.
Not one bit. Welcome to Control.
See what the Necromancer target is. It's Camel, and that is pretty strong here because it prevents Frenzy from, again, drawing a card from the Mania lane. Searches for the Ice Storm. And dumps, among other things, a Grey Viper down there, too. Card Boomslife is playing really nice when you can discard the first one with a Camel, so the others can get some value.
So, quite a draw. The Devaith Experiment really represents a lot of shenanigans in the future.
Even more so when you have cards like Onkano and Sun and Shadow with such strong summon abilities in hand. Getting one of those to stick and then making 2 copies of it.
Being able to use the Sun and Shadows to then find the Uprising that will make these summon abilities, you could imagine there's quite a few ways that this could end up being a summon trigger fest.
You can see why players like Frenzy and Hackney like this deck so much.
We must count on our wits.
And this deck is doing exactly what it's supposed to do, that it ramps up into these late game plays, and then you get to them and you just overwhelm your opponent.
Opponent Ancestor comes down just to sort of wall up and hopefully guarantee that Frenzy draws from the Mania lane next turn. Boomslife not without answers here. Almost feels forced to Darkfire.
Especially after the Sun and Shadows, now we get to have a fun game of specifically predicting. Let's
Is he
see
gonna
if
choose it?
Boomslife knows Frenzy.
9.
No, he expected the Devaith Experiments as the first Sun and Shadows hit, but Frenzy already had it. So it's really the on-ring Conscription on turn 10 because of the ramp, so we could see a lot of value come down.
Yeah, it's hard to say he chose wrong per se, but it did not work out this time. Do you think Frenzy just goes for it? It is his only Conscription.
I think
but
so.
it fits the deck a ton.
I think that you just don't want those cards in there. So it improves your future draws by removing all of the 2 costs or a lot of the 2 costs from your deck. You won't know exactly what you're going to pull, I don't think, because Frenzy has 9 2-cost creatures in the set.
There he goes.
So we're going to see 7 of them.
Here they come.
No, that's not right.
And as we know too, he does have the Ward Crafter and Mentor's Ring, so if this board isn't dealt with the Ice Storm, which we assume it is, then Frenzy will punish him, but I assume we'll see the Ice Storm come down.
Yeah, it's really one of those where the fail state of this play is still that you get to draw a bunch of cards, make your deck a lot better on average, and threaten.
Notably, he missed out on Thieves Guild Recruit. There's a Thieves Guild and a Fighters Guild in there. I think those were the wisps. Thieves Guild would have cycled for a card, which I'm sure he would have liked, but even still, the Sly Marshblade will eventually draw another card, so there's that. And you also don't have another Dragon Tail Savior or Barrow Stalker or Harpy in your deck, which was, I think, the goal. Boomslife doing his best to clean this mess up.
I smell the
Barrow
stench
Stalker going to
of
contest the
living.
Sly Marshblade in the field lane. Oh, Firebolt going to contest it. Wants to clean up the Vigilant Ancestor too, knowing that the Mania lane is still a very relevant part of who has the advantage in this game.
You see Frenzy already drawing a couple 5s, reducing the number of 2s in his deck.
Yeah, not basing the deck around conscriptions so much. I remember the really early versions would always play like 3 conscriptions, maybe a Journey to Sovngarde 2. You'd play up to 4 maybe in a game, and you don't need to play 4 conscriptions to outvalue your opponent, but certainly
Really
feels bad.
An opportunistic conscription, not necessarily playing the Ungolem plan the way you would see that in the past, but instead focusing on just a few good things. And now, what we're seeing now is Frenzy trying to construct what the end game could look like.
I think he's getting almost, in some ways, a little bit antsy here, trying to get this Uncano, trying to get the experiments on the Uncano to get all the value. A little bit surprising it played a little bit slower and look at like Gatekeeper or the Mage. Obviously, I'm cheating a little bit with the caster vision, saying that that wasn't going to last for very long. But you have to remember, like, what are the win conditions? Like, what can you copy that wins? And I guess Mana Marco's also in the deck, and Odaming as well.
Ooh, Boomslife picking up Maroc off the Camel, but has to ship some pretty solid cards, like the Sarioni and the Cast into Time.
Abner Tharn showing up for Frenzy, which can target the triggers of your opponent's cards. So if there's a situation where Booms gets that Maroc in play, there's a chance that Abner threatens to take that trigger, which is one of the strongest in the game.
I'd also be really tempted here of a 6-mana 5/5 Camel, just being able to dig through my cards more.
Yeah, that is looking pretty good. And Frenzy has no shortage of Magicka to play what he draws. I wonder what the best target now is for Experiment.
Mana Marco, Odaming.
Yeah, I don't know how likely it is that they survive for a whole turn after you play them. I don't know if he's going to get to that amount of Magicka.
I could imagine a situation in which a Hykem Emmerich could be drawn with a bunch of ward cards. That could be a good device experiment.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Oh, that's
cards
actually
that do
insane.
well.
It is.
Isn't it? Yeah, Wardcrafter, Mentor's Ring, and Emmerich is only... How much magic is that? 13?
It's plenty, but
I think it's 13.
there's some ramp
Yeah,
involved. we
we're
might get
past
there.
that. We're definitely past that number, yeah. Wow. I hope that's how the game ends, kind of, now. I don't think I've seen that.
Boomslife here having to be careful with his resources here. If he uses them at the wrong time, I think it does come down to how efficient he is with the resources in hand right now.
Both players in general, from a resource standpoint, you can see there's been a flurry of advantage in the resource battle happen, and then it's kind of stabilized. We're still at a point where neither player wants to give somebody an additional card for fear that that's going to be the one that tips it over the edge.
Frenzy's draw, not particularly great. Fighters Guild Recruit at this stage of the game, and it looks like he's going to take the Silver Fuse line of copying Merchant's Camel and trying to cycle through his deck a little bit more.
Doing his best Camel impersonation.
Fine.
Abner.
Oh, he's going to... Oh, that's a good target.
And it's,
Why not go
Copies
through all
after.
the deck?
Copies
ex-
Abner Camels again.
I would expect the copy then to be placed into the shadow because you really want to split your lanes here to keep Abner going, even if there's a ref.
Yeah, because even though he's used Evasive Experiments, he still has both uprisings that we haven't seen him draw yet. Oh, there we go.
This is a huge Dawn's Wrath on Boom's turn.
Yeah, and I don't think there's ever a time where we don't see it. I mean, we know what happens if we don't see it. It's not good for Boom's life, but...
With cast, you imagine
Yes.
after you just played Camel 3 times in a row in one turn, they probably have the uprising.
It's really going to be on Frenzy to try to figure out a plan for how are you going to win this game.
Well, right now it looks like an army of 5/5s. I mean, he
Oh.
doesn't know there's a Dawn's Wrath.
Yeah, pretty much the nightmare scenario would be if for some reason Maroc was played, but Boom's life knowing that Uprising is most likely in hand, that would be a terrible idea.
You could have done some chip damage there before doing that. His opponent is at 44, but I think there are some other more pressing priorities. He's losing the card advantage battle all of a sudden, and Frenzy is just going for the cycle. Ooh, the Death Priest.
There we go.
Maroc
Huge
is
Death
no
Priest.
longer a factor.
In the future too, these Uprising is going to just keep on looking better, with Boom's life not able to have the answers that he is looking for.
Boom's life did successfully get rid of all of the Abner Tharns, the army of Abners.
That's a good uprising. Typically, you want the backbreaking value that makes you go wow, but this is an uprising that's going to do a bunch of work.
Yeah, that's painful. Like on the surface, it looks like not that many summon effects, but getting rid of 2 of the most high impact cards Boom's life has in his deck, that's a big deal.
And it's easy to forget that Fathom lane is still over there mattering quite a bit.
Yeah. Fortunately, these players are both better than I am at Legends, so they didn't forget. I might have forgotten. I'll be honest with you, Jason.
Oh,
Yeah.
I've forgotten.
Thank you for reminding me.
I really hear, like we said earlier, Telvanni doing what it does best, just being able to outgrind these control decks that don't have something like the Flesh Atronach OTK and the Ebonheart Pact, and one of the reasons why Frenzy banned it, knowing that this Telvanni could just kind of outdo these other control decks.
There's Felix Exemplar going to prevent the Mania lane from drawing Frenzy a card. The number is 6. So Necromancers, stuff like that. Necromancer, Emmerich, and Abner. But Abner's gone now. All of them.
All of them.
All 3 of them. Because you can apparently do that.
Boom's life got to be sad with staring at those mummies. Those are previously pretty strong haymakers, and now
I do
not a whole lot to back up this Seducer Darkfire.
Yeah, those mummies, like, honestly, just could be nothing in his hand. And here is the Mentor's Ring on the board. And it looks like
Huge
now
for
there's no more
lethal.
hope for the Mania lane to not be in Frenzy's control.
The lethal granted by the Mentor's Ring to be able to get rid of the Seducer and make sure that the lane gives you the card or doesn't give Boom's life the card to really lock him out. Huge play.
Frenzy not really drawing cards that help him close the game by themselves, but the board is still so far in his favor right now.
I mean, at this point, is Boom's life, like, what can you hope for? Like, Sophasil
I
is just going to
smell
die
the
to these
stench
staples.
of the
Odahing
living.
doesn't clear all that much. There just aren't many options for him here.
Yeah, it's really hard to say, and it just gets progressively more out of his control the more cards Frenzy draws. He finds another camel. Pitches a camel. Oh, finds Loneth with the camel.
Beware my power.
What do you search for here?
Do you get Mana Marco?
Looking
Or
pretty
get
solid.
another uprising so that you can trigger your Laneth and get something else later?
That's just a lot.
I kind of like the Uprising. I mean, look at that board. How can you not want to Uprising it?
Well,
that-
to be fair, Death Priest no longer does anything with Boom's life out of cards.
It might. It gives
Could.
Frenzy an opportunity
It's
to actually break runes, and then after breaking runes, play an uprising to hollow Death Priest, whatever was drawn off of the rune break.
All right, I dig it.
But in general, this game's coming down to the Fathom lane.
Oh, there we go.
Victory is
Oh,
yours.
the concede from Boom's life. He had some light answers to the board, but nothing that was really going to get him back into it. And Frenzy ties it up 2-2 with his Tribunal deck. And we're going to see a Game 5 of Tribunal, excuse me, Telvanni versus Guildsworn. What do you think about this? Does Guildsworn, it has the rages, so that'll matter a lot if there's a conscription or something like that. Who do you think is favored in this kind of matchup?
Personally, I'm just a big fan of Telvanni. I think it's underplayed right now. I think just the Mentor's Ring combo and the value that Frenzy gets, one rage isn't going to be enough against his deck unless there is just no DK combo. So I think Frenzy's going to be just a cycle power of Telvanni, the Mentor's Ring, the wards, and I think Frenzy's going to be a bit favored in it.
All right, we'll see how that shakes down momentarily. It'll be really interesting to see if the deck that only Frenzy brought can overcome Guildsworn, which 5 different players brought. Boomslife, of course, is playing a few different things. I know he and Witta tested together, and they came to, again, Seducer Darkfire is another 3 of in this deck, like Boomslife's, like his Tribunal. He's also playing 3 copies of Apex Wolf, which is kind of an annoying card to deal with when you're trying to outvalue your opponent. So we'll see how that works out for him. We'll see if he can land a solid rage. That seems like probably his main win condition in the matchup. Otherwise, yeah, he actually does lack some of the pressuring tools. He's actually not playing Alfie Conjurer in this Guildsworn deck. So no Alfie Conjurers, no Mighty Conjurings.
Instead, he's playing Tier.
He is playing Tier.
Don't see a whole lot of Tier.
You really don't. Not since the story when you choose it over Orb of Vermina. I actually don't know if I might have chosen the Orb.
I chose the Orb.
You did? Of course you chose the Orb. Like one of these doesn't have a power. I don't need power up my creatures. All right, we are in game. This one Ancestor comes down. And it's looking pretty slow for Booms, and expectedly so for Frenzy.
That might be okay. Doesn't really need the fast reactive tools that you would expect out of some of the other matchups that he could have been in today, but instead, you're gonna have some time.
They will perish in flame.
Another Skaven Pyromancer down, chipping away at the Ancestor, which looks like it might eat both Skavens for free.
It's a pretty good Ancestor.
Guards, to me!
Yeah, I'm seeing Ancestor probably a little bit more just because of the Dawnbreaker being changed from not just instantly killing Ancestor, so it becoming another Telvanni tool makes sense here.
Cloud Rest potentially coming down to
A
make
little
sure that the
distraction
Ancestor
might
doesn't
prove
kill the
useful.
Pyromancer back. It doesn't take down 2 Pyromancers after all.
Yep, fighting for that little incremental bit of value. Of course, Queen does have a pretty good trade on the Pyromancer, so we're going back and forth here.
You are full of surprises.
Frenzy already with a late game plan in his hand of Conscription, but it's a little nervous playing against these rage decks.
Yeah, we'll see if Boomslife can either land something with Breakthrough or maybe use the Guildsworn Oathman to get an improvised weapon in the hand to give something Breakthrough along with the Rage. Probably should focus on dealing a little bit of early damage as well.
Thadon again. Thadon in the shadow is a terrific play here. Often Telvanni will require things like the Viper to take down the large creatures, so that playing into the shadow means that with Boomslife, typically larger creatures, Frenzy's going to need to find like non-typical answers that
And
you don't typically
has
see.
them. He can answer with Negation Viper or Negation Finish Off, but in order to prevent Thadon from giving him card advantage, he has to sort of 2-for-1 himself, which
Every time.
Yeah, it's exactly what you don't want to be doing. So really no way for Frenzy to get out of this ahead on cards.
And then seeing Boomslife's hand too, that in the future, this isn't the only big body that Frenzy is going to have to deal with. There's more and more and more, and at some point, I don't see how Frenzy is going to be able to really win this Shadow Lane.
Yeah, definitely not with this hand as it stands, with cards like Mentor's Ring and Inscription sort of dead for the time.
A benefit of the Telvanni is that you play small creatures, so Thadon really turns that on its head, and Guildsworn's over average size. That, for instance, that Guildsworn Oathman, just the body, could be really big.
And yet, yes, always Seduce. What do you choose here? I always wonder. I don't think maybe it's Uprising just because like eventually it'll be good, and it looks like the Seducer might actually live for a while.
Do you choose any way that Frenzy could potentially stop the body of Seducer Darkfire, that you just want to make sure to draw a card? So
How do you even stop the body though?
potentially
right now?
negation?
More negation and more Vipers.
Yeah.
It's true. Maybe it's not even Seducer Darkfire. Maybe Boomslife is deciding to wait until there's a clearer target.
Walk
Nope. He is going for it, and he has a plan. And that plan is 5. All right, let's go through it again. Oh, he really felt the Hollow Death
No
Priest
Death
last
Priest.
game. So it's Death Priest, it's Sun and Shadow, Shadow
Fen
Fen Priest,
Priest.
Gatekeeper too, Gatekeeper and his mage. So I think it's just about
Yeah.
the sheer number of decent cards that he could play for 5. And you know, there's Uprising, and again, it does essentially nothing here. Queen technically has a summon effect, but it's not really worth duplicating a lot of the time. So Frenzy has a lot of really powerful cards that are not super great, and it looks like there's no way for Boomslife to not draw 2 cards from the Mania lane. That has really been the sort of key card of this entire match.
Absolutely, and it plays into exactly what Booms wants to do. He wants to force creatures into the shadow so that rage and other things can be much more effective. So the rest of the game is going to be played in that shadow because of that on.
A hard pass from Frenzy here. 2 cards drawn, and they're pretty good.
And this Shadow Lane is going to just become incredibly hard to deal with. We do have the Viper in the future, but still the 7/7 is Telvanni not being very good at dealing with a bunch of tall threats unless they can Viper.
Well, there's one Viper, but Seducer Darkfire still turning off all 5 costs, and the Mania lane still drawing Boomslife 2 cards a turn. These 2 aren't very good, but it's okay because Boomslife has Loneth and he can search for whatever he wants. After punching for 7.
So Loneth's large body also continues to make the threat of the Mania lane lock down the attrition war.
And that's sort of a downside of like the old school conscription decks with a bunch of 2-drops. When you start getting pressured, those 2-drops really don't help you out. They really help you against aggression on like turns 2 and 3, but when you start getting them from rune breaks, you really don't have a ton to do. That Skin Hound isn't doing a ton to answer this board. Rage is now on board. Well, in the hand. It might hit the board.
And you're also threatening some of the combo that you can see out of Guildsworn Oathman, the potential to get a improvised weapon, which would give breakthrough to a creature. So as we play in the shadow, and as smaller creatures, which is what populates the Telvanni deck, are forced to be played there, the risk of being killed by a large unstoppable rage is higher and higher.
And Boomslife's ready to proc the Oathman whenever he wants. He has Skaven Pyromancer to turn that half of the effect on. Of course, Belligerent Giant already has breakthrough, and it's looking pretty good, if I'm honest here, if he wants to keep pushing that damage.
Absolutely, might not even need the rage.
Yeah, you could even have a little bit of fun and Belligerent Giant his own Loneth and then just save that for later. At this point, the tempo's so low on Frenzy's side, you honestly could do that.
Of course, Boomslife does have a pretty clear way to deal 13 damage here. See if he goes for it. Actually doing something else. I was thinking maybe execute Belligerent Giant, but this is going to... Wait, no, I didn't even factor in the shackle. But here we go. Gets the improvised weapon and gets the forked bolt.
It's an interesting choice to split lanes there. There's not a whole lot of punishment that you could expect if you continue to push Shadow.
Yeah, I think it's probably just thinking of the one of Red Brahmin, right?
I think so.
I was also thinking too, if you're going to rage that side of the board, then you don't want to rage all of your own creatures too. Because he doesn't need drain right now. So usually he might set up some drain, but here he just wants to keep some creatures alive.
Well, for the first time in a while, Boomslife not going to be drawing off the Mania lane. And looking to probably continue the pressure. He knows Frenzy's going up to 11 with the ring, so the conscription is a definite probability, but that would simply lose him the game immediately.
I'm looking to put high power in play because it's in the combo's ready. It's locked and loaded, and we'll see whether or not Frenzy is going to just risk it.
Yeah, I mean, his back is against the wall here. Boomslife has the combo pieces assembled, but at the same time, he has a really powerful board, so he might not even need it.
Exactly, that's 12 life. It's not very far away. Those are giants on the board. That's a giant.
Yeah. Well, Loneth is an honorary giant, I guess.
I'd say he's looking for a negation here to be able to kill this Loneth and then also play the Uncano with it. That would just give him some ability to get rid of the Shadow Lane, get a few things on board, and maybe give him a chance. I am interested to see what he's hovering here, trying to decide if it's worth keeping or not.
Galen.
I have many important things on my mind.
And Kano deals with the Belligerent Giant. Barbie deals with the Loneth. 6 damage on board. Another double draw for Boomslife as he tries to piece together the last points of damage needed to become our 4th semifinalist.
Interesting choice for Boomslife here, whether you push the damage or just make sure Inkanu's gone. You're so close to having lethal that maybe you just push.
Forked bolt. Piercing javelin.
Frenzy with not many prophecies.
Down to 5, another Oathman on board. Locks up his incredibly powerful board. Gives him another Forked Bolt for another point of damage. And Death Priest is the draw. Doesn't seem too effective in this particular case. Is there anything Frenzy can do?
No.
Oh, well.
We'll see though. Like, you got to go for it in case that Lyneth had chosen something else earlier. But it's going to be tough.
Yeah, God, how many cards did that Mania Lane draw for Boomslife this game?
Too many.
Too many.
Way too many.
We were counting Alpha 8 Conjurers earlier, but maybe we should have been counting Mania Lane draws.
Yeah, who'd have thunk? That was the real value engine on turn 6. We'll see if Frenzy can piece together anything. He's going to play the Conscription, and we can see with Master Vision that that's going to do it in possibly a variety of ways for Boomslife. Frenzy throws out the GG. All right, what are we going to rage, everyone? Which card gets the rage?
Well enough, please.
Yeah.
Dang it.
Oh, no. He's going for the Guildsword
Nothing.
Open and just face. Well, that's
No
one
way.
way to do it, and Boomslife locks up the series 3 games to 2 and moves on to the semifinals. And he is stoked about it. That was epic. Man, those stat-ons. I can't even get over that. That was like the quintessential value card. So good. See Boomslife. Ever the sportsman, handshake there with Frenzy.
All right, well, that is going to be 3-2 for Boomslife. How many draws did Phaedon give over the course of that series? That was insane.
More than enough. It was incredible.
It's got to be like 15. I think something like that.
So for anyone who doesn't know, us on the casting desk, we all take notes over the course of the games. Mine just say Phaedon, Death Priest, Phaedon, Phaedon in the Shadow Lane this time. So I think the other highlight for me has to be the double Death Priest play. Getting both the Barak and the Lyneth out of that hand all at once. Zombies are fun, but they're not really going to get it done in a Tribunal versus Telvanni match, I think?
Yeah.
I see a couple other highlights going on here. What do you guys think?
It's been a while now, but I still remember that Seducer Darkfire.
Oh man, that was good.
I mean, it really did control the game, just locking out the Javelin. And
Absolutely.
I mean, like I said, if it wasn't Javelin, if it wasn't a 5-cost, it would have just been killed instantly, and I think Frenzy would have just won that game. So that critical decision of what to lock out was huge in that game.
I think the play sequence of the different decks and the choices made a big deal too. The Dagoth being able to like early take out the Battle Mage was a big part of the route for victory. That then all that was left was the control, and Booms really had an edge.
Well, Mr. Controller, are you happy now? Is this what you wanted, Jason? Are you happy?
I'm pretty happy.
Good, I'm glad. You know who else is going to be happy? It's going to be Boomslife, who we have coming up to the stage for an interview in just one short moment. I'm really impressed with the way Telvanni worked when it worked. Because when it worked, it really did what it was designed to do. It went late, had lots of value generated, and was able to grind that game out. But Boomslife able to take that game away from the Telvanni with that Guildsworn. Guildsworn being one of those decks that it's so popular, people are bringing it for its versatility, and I think it really showed there, being able to put the pressure on early.
Really took away what Telvanni does best. The Guildsworn really putting the pressure with the potential rages as well as the big bodies necessary to contest the Mania Lane. It really is exactly the way you want to fight against Telvanni.
All right, well, we have Boomslife here on the desk with us. Congratulations, you're going to the semifinals. How are you feeling?
Thank you, man. What a game that was.
How do you feel about the series?
What did you say?
How do you feel about the series? Any highlight moments for you?
It was a very close series. I mean, Frenzy is a very good player. He brought some very interesting decks. I had no idea how the Telvanni would work, so I was a little bit worried when he took the game against my Tribunal, but I had faith in the Guildsworn, so I was kind of confident going into the last game, but I felt like it was still very close.
Talk to me about your Seducer Darkfire choices. What was going through your mind when you were determining what cost to axe out for Frenzy?
Okay, so let me first ask you one question.
Please.
Did they work?
You know, one of them worked really, really well. There was a javelin locked in Frenzy's hand for, what, 6, 7 turns, something like that?
Okay. Now, I brought the Seducer Darkfire because it's kind of a pet peeve card for mine. So I really like the card. I hit top 10 legend with it in mid-mage. So I knew I wanted to bring something that resonates with me to the actual tournament. So I decided to, instead of bring Pilver Monk, which probably a lot of people expected or wanted, I decided to spice it up with the Darkfires, Seducer Darkfires.
I like it. It turns out spice sometimes pays out.
Yeah.
Casters, anything you'd like to ask our winner here?
What did you think about the Thadons and how important Thadon was to the match in general?
I got very annoyed when he had all 5 games the ring, and Tandon in 2 of his games on turn 5 and turn 6, if I remember correctly. At least one on turn 5, and that one kind of tilted me a little bit. So it was very important in this match, and I mean, at the end I won, so I can't be too mad.
The Thadon looked pretty good for you at the end.
How confident are you going into your next match?
Honestly, if I remember correctly, it was Super.
Yes.
Yes, Super has a very good lineup against mine, so that's going to be very tough. But you never know. We'll see. He's a good player. I mean, we're all good players here, so I'll try my best. I'm already happy I made it past the first round, and maybe I'll win, maybe I won't. We'll see.
I mean, that's a good way to look at it, right? You're here, you're having fun, you're winning some games. What could be better, right?
Exactly.
All right, well, thank you so much for joining us, and congrats. We'll see you in the semifinals.
Thank you, man.
Yeah. All right, we're going to take a look at the bracket now that the quarterfinals have wrapped up. Semifinals number 1 coming up next will be Thuldir versus Karakon Jewel. Our 2 returning players from last year are going to be duking it out for a spot in the finals. After that, Boomslife, our recent victor, is going to be going up against Super Thanks. Do we have any predictions on how the semifinals are going to shake out?
Well, in the first one, not nearly enough control. So, but in general, it's going to be a terrific treat to watch those Titans play. Everybody in the top 4, terrific players, expert gameplay. It's going to be a blast.
Yeah, I agree. Silverfuse, any words before we kick it off to a break?
I'm just really excited for these next couple of games. Like I said, the gameplay is going to be amazing, and really just the best players in the world right here. We get to see it.
All right, well, we're going to take a break. Make sure if you are here in the convention hall, check out our sponsor, Alienware. They have lots of good stuff you can check out while you're here. We wouldn't be able to make events like this possible without their help. And remember, we have more Legends action coming up after this, so don't go anywhere other than Alienware.